بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد: قد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. My dear respected ulama brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm really grateful and really honored to be here, and the reason for that is manifold. Firstly, the topic is a very essential, very fundamental, very elementary topic, and I'm sure you've already been enlightened about it a great deal. The second point is that purification of the heart, it's very closely related to this concept of giving and sadaqah. The reason is that giving and sadaqah is a selfless act. It's actually something that people do not do. Most people do not do very easily. There's very few people who can actually give something away just like that. And that's why it's such a selfless act. And it's something that has to be learnt. You know, many of us, when people are asking and we're just like, I really want to give, but I can't give, because we're making 1,000 excuses in our mind, right? They come because shaitan does not want us to give. Sadaqah tudfi'u ghadab ar-Rabb. Sadaqah, it calms the anger of Allah. So if we've done something which we should not have done, if there's something bad going on in our life, some calamity, some problem, sadaqah is supposed to be very effective, because if we are to assume that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is displeased with us for some reason, we give sadaqah, and that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger will be calmed by it. وَتَدْفَعُ مِيتَةَ السُّوءِ. It also repels an evil death, an evil sealing state. So that essentially when we're about to die, we won't be thinking of something else that we're normally going on about all day long. The problem with our death, which really relates to the purification of the heart, is that normally when a person is about to die, the thing that would normally, automatically, naturally, spontaneously come out on their tongue will normally appear at death as well. For example, when I was studying in Syria, there was the main bazaar called the Souk Hamidiyya, right, which is right by the Umayyad Mosque, the Umayyad Masjid. And I used to have to go through there every day to go and study with Sheikh Abdur Rahman there. And there was this one particular, I don't know what he used to sell because I never went there, but I think he was selling some t-shirts or some garments or something. And he would say this weird thing. And any time of the day you went, the full day the person is making dhikr of this word or this phrase or whatever it is, some really, he became unique about that. And that was his actually selling point. He would attract people by that. My whole thing was that if that is what he is saying for 8 to 12 hours a day, literally like non-stop, because any time you want, he'd be doing it, what will the case be at death? Right? Because if that's what you're so used to saying, he probably says it in his sleep. Gets up in the morning and starts saying it in the middle of the night. His wife probably has to slap him one or something. Right? It's just really sad. What we normally say, and that really matters. Another thing is that let's just say somebody kind of irritates you. Somebody irritates you. Somebody bothers you. Right? What do we normally say? What normally comes to our mind? What actually comes to on our tongue? That's what really have to be concerned about. You can justify it in whatever you want. Oh, what he done was very bad, so it's fine for me to swear. But is that what we want on our deathbed? Because our death could come in any form, various different ways it could come to us. That's why it's very important. This subject, as I said, is very important. And thirdly, the great thing about this program is that it's a bunch of sisters that have put this together, which really should put the men to shame. One thing is that we're very happy about it because, mashallah, sisters are doing something while maintaining the etiquette, that the Islamic adab. And but on the other hand, as men, do we have enough men out there trying to do this? Yes, the men were helping, they were running the show, and may Allah thank all of these ulama and others who are in Ummah Welfare Trust. but it's actually the sisters who are behind this. And this is not just one group, there's another group, there's a few groups like this that are essentially run by sisters. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them tawfiq. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them abundantly. So there's a number of reasons why this is such a good program, inshaAllah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it, have its benefits, have very far-reaching benefits and consequences, inshaAllah. Going back to the verse, and you may have heard this over and over again, but it's an important verse. It tells you essentially of the function of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this world. It's a very comprehensive term. We've got many verses in the Quran, but this particular verse, which is in Surah Al-Imran, verse number 164, it tells us what the Prophet ﷺ came for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored the believers. This is a favor upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored the believers because He has sent among them إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. He sent among them a messenger from among them, from humankind. Not an angel, not a jinn, not a different type and species of a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but a human being. Now, these are the functions. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. He recites the verse, he recites Allah's verses to them. The Quran is conveyed through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger to us. Number one. Number two, يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ is number two. Yuzakki means He purifies them. Purification is very important, and that's what we're going to be speaking about. And then it says, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet, the Messenger, He teaches them the kitab and wisdom. وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Whereas before that, prior to that, they were in a clear and manifest misguidance. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Messenger could have been successful with people who are in absolute and total misguidance, then you can imagine that inshallah we're not that bad. He can definitely be successful for us, and He can gain success with us as long as we open up our hearts. Now the thing about yuzakkihim is that this is a responsibility to gain purification of the heart, cleanliness of the heart, safa'ul qalb, tazkiyatul qalb, a purity of the heart, so that it is available to take the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into it. That there is no darkness in it which is preventing the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enter into our hearts. There was a brother that I knew two brothers. One of them had started doing a lot of dhikr in the last 6 months or so. The other brother once met with this brother because he lived in another area. When they hugged and embraced, that second brother said to me later, because I asked him, how did you get into doing a lot of dhikr and things? What was your turning point? Because I knew him before that. He said, essentially, I met this one brother, and when I hugged him, I just felt some ajib light. I just felt this ajib warmth, this strange warmth. Something just was different about this. And I spoke to him, and the person revealed to me that he'd been making a lot of dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dhikr has its effects. And the reason for that is very clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that the example of a person that remembers Allah, الَّذِي يَذْكُرُ رَبَّهُ وَالَّذِي لَا يَذْكُرُ, the one who remembers Allah and the one who does not, is as simple as the example of a live and a dead person. I mean, that is a very explicit example and a contrast, a juxtaposition. We're essentially alive biologically, physically, physiologically, but when it comes to spiritually, that's when we are dead, or we are dead at different levels, or we're certainly diseased if our hearts aren't pure. And the most diseased of hearts are of the munafiqeen. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that very clear in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. Among people, there are those who say, Amanna billah, that we believe in Allah. They believe in Allah, they say that, and we believe in the last day. If you say you believe in Allah and the last day, it means you essentially believe in everything in between. Because those are the two, you start with your belief of Allah, and your end belief is that there is a last day, there is a resurrection. So, they believe in everything in between. وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. But they are not believers. They are certainly not believers in any way, shape or form. Then it says, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ. They are deceiving Allah, meaning from their perspective they think they're deceiving Allah because they're deceiving the believers, they think they're deceiving their creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُم, whereas the only people they are deceiving are themselves. They are deceiving none other but than themselves. And وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ, they don't even know about it because they're so misguided that they think it's compound ignorance. They don't even know that they don't know what the reality is. They don't want to give up their previous religion, but in order to benefit from the mainstream. Like people today, you follow the superpower because they're the mainstream. You'd rather be with them and think you're with them even though you hate their guts on the inside. You just kind of act like you're with them. That's hypocrisy. And this is the highest level of hypocrisy, that you can actually express a certain belief that you do not hold inside. That's one of the worst things you can do. Minor aspects of hypocrisy which all relate to the purification of the heart, as Prophet ﷺ said, is إِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفَ وَإِذَا تُؤْمِنَ خَانَ, and if a person makes a promise, he breaks it. If a person is trusted and trusted with something, they betray that trust. وَإِذَا وَعَدَ and when they speak, they lie. These are minor forms of hypocrisy. But higher than that is that you express a belief in something which you don't really have inside. Because then you have to live your life according to that. See, if you were to just lie on an occasion here or there, you could get away with it. But if you have to live a lie, where you have to live as, for example, a husband or a wife, but you don't want to be like that, how difficult is that? If you have to be teaching in a place that you don't agree with their ethos, their ethics, how demoralizing would that be? If you have to work in an environment that you totally disagree with, but yet you have to carry on for whatever reason, can you imagine what kind of difficulty that is? But what about if you're happy to do that? If you're happy, not because you're forced, but you want to because you can, it's for some ulterior motives, that is a serious level of sickness of the heart. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from this disease, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says that they are only deceiving themselves. They don't even know, they don't even realize, they have absolutely no notion of that fact. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. This is what's important for us here. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. In their hearts is a disease. The word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used here is disease. They have a disease in their hearts. It's not a cardiological disease. It's not a cardiac disease that it's suddenly going to make their heart stop working. It's not a physiological. It's definitely some level of psychological disease, but it's a spiritual disease. They have absolutely no idea. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it a disease. If in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling the munafiqeen with a disease, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only increase that disease in them. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just before you misunderstand this, that it is Allah who made them that way, you have to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Imam Abu Hanifa says in his Al-Fiqh Al-Akbar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not create people as believers or disbelievers. وَلَكِنْ خَلَقَهُمْ أَشْخَاصًا. He creates them as neutral individuals. Then it is the prerogative of the individual to believe or disbelieve. And that means, I must clarify that people normally go around saying that every baby is born on Iman. They're not. They're born on the fitrah. And there's a difference between fitrah and acquired faith. There's a difference between there's a difference between fitrah, which the hadith mentions that every offspring is born on the fitrah, then the father makes them a Jewish or a Christian or Magian, and today we can add makes them a modernist or a atheist or whatever else we have out there, right? ثُمَّ يُأَمْرِكَانِهِ ثُمَّ whatever you want to, there's lots of possibilities there. The main thing is that what the Prophet ﷺ said is that every offspring is born on the natural disposition. They've just come from where they've recognized Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that when each one of us was not in this world yet, we were still in the loins of our forefather Adam alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extracted all of his progeny. That means every one of us, our souls were extracted before the creation, a long time. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifested himself in front of us. And he said, Alastu bi rabbikum, aren't I your Lord? And every single one, because we're still in the pure, unadulterated realm, we said, Bala, of course you are. We couldn't deny that. Does anybody remember that though? Anybody here? Because there are people who say they remember these kind of things. Do you ever remember being in your stomach, mother's stomach? Anybody remember that? How cozy it was, how safe it was, right? I mean, subhanAllah, there have been people who said that. But what I'm trying to say is that if you can't even remember something which today you believe in, then there should be no reason to deny the aspect of having had this covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we said, you are definitely our Lord. So we've just come from this pure realm into this world, so we're pure beings. You're pure beings, you're not believers in us. You have what you could call natural faith, iman fitri, natural faith. But it's not acquired faith. Acquired faith is where you start reasoning, you start seeing good and bad, and you make a decision that this is what I want to take. That's, when we become baligh, when we become adolescent, 13, 14, 15 years of age, we need to reaffirm our faith. That's when we get acquired faith, because now we become responsible. Now we will be taken to task for what we do wrong, and will be rewarded for what we do right, in a sense. If we were to die before that, then yes, people do go to paradise because they're on this natural pure realm. They're considered unadulterated until they're mature, in a sense. So just to explain that's a very important point to make. These people have a disease in the heart. Now we want to protect ourselves from that disease. Now clearly, being in this gathering here, we should be free of that disease, because we're not here by force. We're not here to show anybody what we're here for. We're here for ourselves. However, what needs to be explained here is that the importance of the purification of the heart and to remove it from even a minor disease is a responsibility for every single believer. It doesn't matter what group you follow or profess to follow, because we have a lot of, unfortunately, sectarian conflicts. It doesn't matter. This is a responsibility. And the reason I mention this is because there are certain individuals who think that this thing has to be done as part of a particular sectarian group. Otherwise, you are not. It's only a responsibility for the Sufis. And that's a misunderstanding. The only difference between decent Sufis and good Sufis, valid Sufis, genuine Sufis, and the rest of us maybe, right, if we don't profess to be Sufis, is that they just overtly do it. It's like a hadith scholar who loves his hadith studies and is constantly looking at hadith, so he's got a dominance of hadith study. Another person who's always on about fiqh and jurisprudence. Another person who's always speaking about tafsir. So they are overtly and explicitly just showing an interest in that. And that's what you call the people. Sufis generally are people who are very overt about it. They've just got a dominance of that. But everybody, regardless of what group we come from, there needs to be a level of purification of the heart. Because at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in a beautiful dua, or beautiful statement, Ibrahim alayhi salam makes this beautiful statement. He says, وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. Oh Allah, do not disgrace me. لَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. The day when everybody will be resurrected. Do not disgrace me on that day. And that's our dua, that, oh Allah, do not disgrace us on that day. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ. A day when no children will come to benefit us, and neither any wealth will come to benefit us. It doesn't matter what we had at our disposal in this world, none of that will be of benefit. And there's a great logic in that. Imagine if children were able to benefit their parents. It'd be a long chain all the way up to Adam alayhi salam. But in the hereafter, we're individuals, and the only person you'll actually be with eventually as a lifelong eternal partner is husband and wife, your spouse. So make sure you do good with your spouse in this world, so you're happy in paradise together. If you're unhappy in this world together, then I feel sorry for those people in paradise. Because one person might not get there. Because they don't want to be with that. No, I don't want to be with that person. It's your wife. It's your husband. No, man. Sort yourselves out in this world. Sort yourselves out in this world. If you're living in separate rooms but still married, you need to sort yourself out. It's a disease of the heart. It's arrogance. It's not coming down to the other person's level. It's not giving up something. It's not about, one person is not compromising. Right? This is all the diseases of the heart. You can speak about the diseases of that all. We're talking about it on a very social, akhlaqi perspective. That's what I want to speak about. Going back to the verse in the Quran, Ibrahim alayhi salam says, the day when no wealth and no children, no progeny will be of benefit. And then he says, إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Except the one who comes with a salim heart. except the one who comes with a salim heart, a sound heart that has been worked on, like focused work. How many of us has focused on our hearts? We focused, you get a pimple here or there, even the men are into this now, right? You know, you've got cosmetics, rows and rows of now male cosmetics. In fact, forget cosmetics, you've got male makeup. Because, you know, now is the world of, you know, showing hypocrisy outside of showing yourself in a certain way, right? So you've got male, you know, you've got male makeup nowadays. You know, okay, the women have it, but you've got the male doing this kind of stuff, right? So how many of us have actually focused on our heart? Many of us, if we start getting heart pains, and inshallah, may Allah protect us, will run to the doctor, cardiologist, right? You've got eye problems, run to the optician. You've got ear problems, you know, run to the ENT, whatever it's called, right? The ear, nose and throat doctor, ENT, right? So you've got different things. What happens? Have we even focused and thought about our hearts? Have we even thought about that? And the main thing is what Imam Ghazali and others say, which is quite scary, is that if you reach the age of 40 and your good hasn't dominated your evil, then it's a sad case. Because the more mature we are, the older we get, it just becomes more solidified. And I'm not the purest one here. This is purely a self-reflection. This is an introspection that we are all doing here. Because at the end of the day, I can say what I want to you, but I have to stand up for myself in the hereafter. And I think this is every one of our responsibilities. We want to get that qalbun salim. One of my friends who's a sheikh, he says that you get lots of people that go to. He's a medical doctor as well. Very interesting. He's a pathologist, right? So he's a medical doctor, pathologist, and he's a sheikh. He's an alim. He says I get probably more people coming to me as in my surgery for pathology-related issues and illnesses than I get for people who's coming to me to sort my heart out, my deen out. That's really sad. I mean, really, if we just introspect, how many of us have thought, what is the state of my heart? What will I give it if it's on a meter of 100? In terms of the black dots that are there. How many? 50 bad black dots, 20 black dots, 70, 80, 90, covered, recovered? May Allah forgive us. May Allah purify our hearts. Because seriously, it's just something, I'm just giving some food for thought here. To myself and everybody else. Because every bad deed that we do, even if we think it's the last time, we just need to do it once more, we just need to get that one more pleasure. Then I'll stop. The problem is that this actually works like roots on a tree. The longer you want to take a tree out, take it out as soon as possible. You leave it, its roots will become more entrenched and firm in the ground. It'll become more established, and uprooting a tree that is 40 years old is much more difficult than uprooting a 2-week, 2 years or 3-year tree. It is really, this is what the ulama have mentioned. You know, it's difficult. The more you become used to something, it becomes second nature. We have to unlearn it, and we have to learn the good things. It's mentioned, for example, I just read recently, one of the Salaf, he says that I used to have a problem of excessive anger, flying off the handle, right? You know, I'm sure many of us are like that, which is called Sari'ul Ghadab, which means getting angry very fast. You know, you've got 4 types of people in anger. Sari'ul Ghadab, Sari'ul Zawal, Bati'ul Ghadab, Bati'ul Ghadab, Bati'ul Zawal, Sari'ul Ghadab, Bati'ul Zawal, and Bati'ul Ghadab, Sari'ul Zawal. We can just decide which ones we are and focus accordingly. Essentially, one is a person who gets angry very quickly at the smallest thing, but then calms down very quickly. Another one is it takes a very long time to get angry. It takes a very long time to cheese that person off, right? And then when they do get angry, they stay angry for a very long time. 2 days. Man, are you relaxed yet? Man, it happened 2 days ago. No, still angry. What are you guys doing? Okay. So that's a very slow to get angry, but very slow to relieve themselves. Then you've got the other two, which is gets angry very fast and gets angry, calms down very slowly. And then you've got the other one that gets angry very slowly and calms down very fast. Which is the best? The last one's the best. To not get angry very fast and to calm down very fast. When you do. And which is the worst? The worst is the third one, which is gets angry very fast and calms down very slowly. So he's constantly angry because everything, a little bit here and there, is normally irritating them. And we can decide which one we're in and how much effort we need. So what this person of the Salaf, he said that what taught me hilm. Hilm means forbearance. It means something bad happens, you can calmly take it. You deal with it in a calculated way, not in an ignorant way. That's cowardice, where you can be abused. Your religion is abused, your mother's abused, your wife's abused, and you're just sitting back. I don't care. I've got other things to do. I'm somewhere else, right? That is obviously cowardice. That's tahawwur, that's carelessness to an extreme degree. What we're speaking about is somebody who gets angry, somebody who is calculatedly measured in their response. They don't fly off the handle, they deal with it. That is something. How do you get that? Many of us think that it's a natural trait. I get angry very fast, that's how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. My dad's like that, my mom's like that. Some people think that's a family I come from and that's how I am. I've heard this. Don't try to stop me, that's how I am, I can't help it. The person who says that, seriously, they've got no himmah. They've got no aspiration. You are underestimating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very low. And that's the problem. Your opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be high. If He created me like this, He can change me around. What this person from the Salaf said, he said that I learnt hilm and forbearance by living with a careless person. A careless person with a foul mouth. What is a careless person? Imagine you're sharing a room with your brother or sister, or your roommate or flatmate or whatever, and they are so careless, they leave the gas on, right? And you have to run to put it off. They leave the milk outside so it goes bad the next day. They leave their their clothes all over the place, right? And you just go in there and they leave rotten food around. Subhanallah, what is going to happen to you? But if you live with such a person purely for the exercise, and you think, I'm going to take it easy, right? Because some people are just so careless that they don't want to change, they find it very difficult to change, they're just very heedless in that regard. But we could take that as, he said that that's where I learned my hilm and forbearance from. And over on top of that, the person had a foul mouth. So not only do you have to see his carelessness attitude, but you have to hear it as well. Imagine what kind of patience that takes. So forbearance is a level above just patience, where it's a calculated way of resolve. And he says that, and I continued to do that and exercise restraint, and until forbearance had become my character. It become my nature. It become innate to me. So it can be learnt. And what Allama Nahlawi says after quoting this story, he says that this is the same case with miserliness. It's the same case with many of these heart diseases that we have. They have to be learned to become second nature, meaning the opposites have to be learned to become second nature. So same thing when you talk about giving, not being able to spend £5, right? And you feel very tight. You one day just in a moment of generosity just give 50, give 10 times that amount. And now your heart will open up for 10. And you'll be able to give 10 very easily. And the other thing is, don't remember what you give. Allah will keep that record. If you remember it, Shaitan will continue to make you accumulate that. And you'll think, oh, I have given so much in my life. Just give and forget. Allah will let Allah remember it. It will be much better to have that surprise on the Day of Judgment than to continue calculating it for ourselves. Just start giving. If it's 5, believe me, just give 50 one day. If you have a problem with 50, give 200 one day. Take 10 times the amount and just give it one day. Just as a cure. If you had a problem, you'd pay for it. Some people pay for the medicine, you'd pay for some specialists, you'd pay for a course. Just consider this a course in Islamic adab. And that will inshallah benefit us. Now, another problem of the heart is when we start seeing things in distorted ways. And more as we get into this world and materialism, capitalism, the dunya essentially has an effect on us. we start becoming distorted in our minds and distorted in our perspective. And that is where the greatest danger is. You know, when we spoke about the munafiqeen and how they have this great disease, that kind of a disease will come into us if we become so affected by ways other than that which are Islamic, until we begin to speak in that same way. That's where the danger is. What I mean by that is there's a very telling hadith. It's related by Ibn Abi Dunya in his Kitab al-Amri bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. It is a weak narration. The Bayhaqi relates it as well. A number of others relate it. It's a weak narration, but the wisdom in there is very important, is very significant, and I think it's very apt in detailing what we experience today in our world. And what's related in there from Abu Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, he was once there, he said, كيف أنتم إذا طغى نساؤكم وفسق شبابكم وتركتم جهادكم وقالوا وإن ذلك لكائن يا رسول الله. The Prophet ﷺ said, how will it be? So he's ruminating, he's thinking aloud, and he's saying, how will it be when your women will begin to become tyrannical? You expect men to be tyrannical. You know, you've got lots of them, right, that are very tyrannical. But how is it going to be when your women start becoming tyrannical? When the husband comes under the thumb of the woman in a tyrannical way, right? And your youth will become transgressors. That will be normal for your youth to be transgressors, just having a good time. And you leave your jihad. You leave your striving and your striving in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were shocked. Look at the surprise. وَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَكَائِنٌ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Is that going to happen, Ya Rasulullah? They couldn't fathom it. So they're asking, is that going to happen? قَالَ نَعْمْ. Of course, yes, it will happen. And then, to their utter dismay and surprise, he said, وَأَشَدُّ مِنْهُ سَيَكُونَ. In fact, something even worse than that will occur. And what is that? وَمَا أَشَدُّ مِنْهُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. What can be worse than that? Already they were shocked. What can be worse than that, Ya Rasulullah? He says, قَالَ كَيْفَ أَنْتُمْ إِذَا لَمْ تَأْمُرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلَمْ تَنْهُوا عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. How will it be when you will give up enjoining the good and prohibiting the evil? Because you'll think maybe that I'm not good enough. And believe me, I don't think I'm good enough to even be speaking to you today. But somebody has to do it. We all have to do it at some level or the other. Whether that's to our family, but in a wise way, not in a military way. Some of us become, mashallah, very pious all of a sudden. They've had a bad life before, and then they become militants in their amr al-ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar, and then they just destroy everything. We don't want that kind of militant amr al-ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar. Nahy al-munkar and amr al-ma'ruf needs to be done with wisdom. Sometimes it does require force, it does require compulsion, it does require some level of anger and himmah, but it needs to be taken step by step. So he says that, how will it be when you stop doing this? For the Sahaba, it's like, that's impossible. How can that happen? They said, وَكَانَ ذَلِكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Is that going to happen as well, Ya Rasulullah? And he says, نعم. And then he said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ وَأَشَدُّ مِنْهُ سَيَكُونَ. He had to take an oath now. Because he could already tell that they were unable to believe it. So now he took an oath. He said, by the one in whose hand is my life, worse than that is to occur. Worse than that is to occur. Can you imagine how bad the Prophet ﷺ would be feeling himself? Just prophesizing this. Probably wishing that he'd be there to help us out at that time, because that was his love for us. But he foretold this so that we could recognize this, that it's a problem. And he said, وَمَا أَشَدُّ مِنْهُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. What can be more severe than that, Ya Rasulullah? قَالَ كَيْفَ أَنْتُمْ إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الْمُنْكَرَ مَعْرُوفًا وَالْمَعْرُوفَ مُنْكَرًا. How will it be when you start seeing the evil as good and you start seeing the good as evil? And don't you think that time is here to a certain degree? That we are totally distorted in certain cases. We just don't know whether to think music, is it halal or haram? Is it good or bad? Brother, there's ikhtilaf. There's a difference of opinion in there. That's what we're told. We're using it for dawah. It's better than Michael Jackson stuff. It's taking the name of Allah, marrying Allah to haram music. You know, I don't want to go on, it's just an example. It's just an example. One hadith that really strikes me is the Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-ghina'u yunbitu al-nifaqa fil qalb, kama yunbitu al-ma'u az-zar." Music creates hypocrisy in the heart, just like water causes crops to grow. For a very long time, I couldn't understand that hadith. But the understanding that I think that I have for it is that, think about it. Once you get into music, what happens to you? Do you then enjoy listening to the Quran? Or is that not exciting enough for you? Once you start getting into music, the only thing that's going to excite you is something new, something even stronger, something even more heavy. Slowly, that's what happens. It creates, what it means by hypocrisy here is that it creates a love for something alien and foreign to what it should be the nourishment of the heart, which is the recitation of the Quran and the dhikr of Allah. I would rather be listening to music than to listen to the Quran, they would say. Because I find more enjoyment in that. And the only reason they listen to anything Islamic would be music nasheeds. So if you say that music nasheeds is actually a cure, right? That's a different story, right? That's a different justification, wallahu a'lam. But subhanallah, just think about it. The more you get into music, music has this ajib ability to influence our minds and our hearts. And nobody can deny that. They say that, there's a study that's done which shows the effect of different activities, exciting activities that it has on your factor of excitement, how it makes the back of your neck feel. You know, when you're excited, back of your neck, hairs stand on end. There's certain effects that excitement has. I mean, there's no children here, but they said sexual intercourse, a good sexual intercourse, is not even as powerful as what music can do for you. The effect that music can do for you, it's even stronger than sexual intercourse. Forget a good cup of coffee, right? Or a burger, or I don't know what else you have around here, right? Seriously, that's the effect of this stuff. Music can make somebody cry, it can make somebody sad, and it can make somebody happy. It has an ajib influence. We're just taking a look at it from our hearts. There was one scholar, somebody said, is music halal or haram? He said, all I know it's from the batil. Forget the fatwa, all I know it's from the batil, it has an effect on your heart. Right? Which is going to replace the benefit that the Quran is going to have and the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to have. That wasn't my topic today, but that's just an example. When you start seeing evil as good and good as evil, when everything becomes so deceptive, so confusing, and that is the focus of shaitan, Iblis, is to deceive and to turn things around. And Dajjal is exactly what that means. That's exactly what Dajjal means. Dajjala means to make something seem otherwise than what its reality is. And that's the function of all of these things. And then the Prophet ﷺ, and then they said, وَكَائِنٌ ya Rasulullah, that's going to happen as well, ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, and even worse than that is going to happen. And he continued the hadith and he mentioned another thing where he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is going to be such a fitna, a test, a trial, some sense of mischief is going to be put upon them in this world that even the wisest of them will become totally confused about it. I don't think we're at that level. And that's why we can be optimistic. We're not at that level. We do have people who understand the right and wrong today, and they tell us and they guide us. And that's the great thing about it. So it's not at that level, inshaAllah. And then that's how the hadith ends in this version. The another version has some addition. But to move on, some basic, simple things. Umar radiallahu anh, we all know Umar radiallahu anh. How did he come out of his house? The day he decided that I'm going to finish the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came out with a sword. He made no secret about it. It wasn't a hidden sword where he's going to go and assassinate secretly. It was out, he's on his way, somebody meets him and says, where are you going? Very frightened about what's happening here. and he said, I'm going to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, na'udhu billah. So the person, to distract him, he says, go and look at your sister's house and your brother-in-law. So he distracted him, and that was the cause for his iman, his Islam. Right? Now, that is how he starts off. Look forward about 2 or 3 decades. He's the Khalifa of the believers. Right? He's the Khalifa of the believers. And reading his life is extremely inspirational. There's one man, this is related by Abu Layth al-Samarqandi in his Tabihul Ghafilin. He says that a person went, he had problems with his wife. What was the problems? His wife used to speak a lot. She used to speak a lot against him. Not speak a lot. Speak a lot is a different story than complain a lot, get angry a lot, just constantly verbally abusive. I've got a very verbally abusive wife. So he's going to complain to Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, get some advice from him. What should I do about it? So he goes all the way to Umar radiallahu anhu's house. He's standing outside, he knocks on the door, and he's waiting for a response. And you know what suddenly hears? He sees this big argument inside. The wife of Umar radiallahu anhu, her name was Kulthum, the daughter of Ali radiallahu anhu. She must have been 20 or 30 years younger, or more, 30, at least about 25 or 30 years younger than Umar radiallahu anhu. The only reason Umar radiallahu anhu married her was so that he could be married into the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was Ali and Fatima radiallahu anhum's daughter. She is having a go at Umar. She is saying all sorts to him. She's angry at him. And this man hears this from outside. He's just knocked on the door. And then he hears this and he thinks to himself, what is he? What are you going to think to yourself if you saw that? I've come here to sort my affair out, get some advice, but his wife is doing the same thing to him. Meaning that's what he equated it as, right? His wife is shouting at him. And he started walking away. Umar radiallahu anhu had heard the knock. So he then came out, and this person had walked, hey, come here, where have you gone to? You knocked, what's wrong with you? You know, Umar radiallahu anhu is taking, like, you knocked, and stay around here now, where are you running off to? He says, to tell the truth, I came for a reason, but I'm wondering how you're going to help me. He says, I came and I had to start start going back, because I said, إِذَا كَانَ هَذَا حال أمير المؤمنين, if this is the situation with the Amir al-Mu'mineen مع زوجته, with his wife, فكيف, how is he going to be with us? فكيف حالي, what's my situation then? Right? Now listen to what Umar radiallahu anhu said. This is the same man who was so angry he went out to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But look what Islam has done for him. Yuzakkihim, Allah purifies their hearts. He turns around and he says, Ya akhi. Look at the way he talks to him. He says, oh my brother. He's at his level now. He's not speaking as the Amir al-Mu'min. Hey, listen up. We weren't arguing. That was the slave girl talking. She was talking to somebody else. She was telling my son off. Imagine if we got caught like that. I'm talking to the men now. Right? Imagine if we got caught like that. With our wives, I mean, unfortunately many of you don't seem to be married, right? I feel sorry for you. But just imagine if you're in that case and your friend suddenly showed up at the door, some stranger, and you're going to make up excuses. No man, yeah, she was on the phone to someone. She was shouting at her friend. Right? Imagine if the women got caught doing that, and their friends outside going, hey, what were you up to? No, don't worry, that was just I don't know, I was talking to the wall. I was talking in the bathroom, singing in the bathroom. You know, would we ever come down, no pretenses, simple, straightforward, no hypocrisy? This is what you call a Sahaba. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he describes the Sahaba. He said they were without pretenses. You told them to eat, Bismillah. If they're hungry, Bismillah, we'll eat. They're not hungry, no, we don't feel like it. Now, brother, you're right, no, I do really. No. We have to be forced to eat. We have to be encouraged to eat. We have to be, that kind of pretenses. So, he does not speak to him as the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Hey, listen up. Right? This is what it's supposed to be. He turns down, he comes down to his level. He said, Ya akhi, inni ihtamaltuha. I am tolerating her. I am bearing all of this. Inni ihtamaltuha. Lihuquqin laha alayya. Lihuquqin laha alayya. Because she has rights over me. She has rights over me. That's why I have to deal with this. I have to bear it. What were these rights? إِنَّهَا طَبَّاخَةٌ لِطَعَامِ. This is not her responsibility, but she bakes my bread. She bakes my bread. طَبَّاخَةٌ لِطَعَامِ. She cooks my food. طَبَّاخَةٌ لِخُبْزِ. She bakes my bread. She makes my food, she bakes my bread. غَسَّالَةٌ لِثِيَابِ. She washes my clothes. She washes my clothes. And مُرْضِعَةٌ لِوَلَدِ. She nurses my child, she breastfeeds my child. None of these are the responsibilities of the wife in court. They're all things which are considered social responsibilities and responsibilities between the woman and Allah for her husband if she comes from a house like that. The fiqh of it is that if a woman comes from a household who do all of this work, she would be expected to carry on doing that kind of work. That's the fiqh of it, right? But really, she can charge the husband, I hope none of you do that, charge the husband for feeding his son, which is her son as well. Because it's his responsibility. I mean, this is some really bare-bone fiqh. But again, don't get too excited. I can start hearing some discussion, please. Right? This is Kulthum. She's speaking. مُرْضِعَةٌ لِوَلَدِي. She nurses my child. وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ بِوَاجِبٍ عَلَيْهَا. This is what Umar said. None of that is wajib and necessary on him. None of that is wajib and necessary on him. And then above all, he said, وَيَسْكُنُ قَلْبِي بِهَا عَنِ الْحَرَامِ. My heart becomes satisfied away, is protected, gets satisfaction away from haram satisfaction through her. Sexual intercourse. She provides for my sexual desires and needs, so I don't have to go into the haram. And فَأَنَا أَحْتَمِلُهَا. So I bear all of this. I'm patient with all of this. فَقَالَ الرَّجُلُ. So this man, he listened to Umar talking to him like a man to man. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, وَكَذَلِكَ زَوْجَتِي. O Amir al-Mu'mineen, my wife is the same. And فَأَحْتَمِلُهَا يَا أَخِي. فَأَحْتَمِلْهَا يَا أَخِي. So Umar said, be patient with her, bear it. They don't do this all the time, they only do it when they get PMT. Right? They only do this when it's time of the month, or unless they get a habit of doing it, which is really sad. Right? They just do it sometimes, just hormonal issues. Men need to understand that. SubhanAllah, with women, one day it's like this, and the next day it's like, well, calm and fine. What happened to you yesterday? It's just the time of the month. You should take medicine, by the way. If somebody has that problem, PMT problem, I shouldn't be telling you, but you should take vitamin, is it vitamin D or vitamin K or something like that? It calms the hormones. And if there's any husbands here that have a problem with that, go and check a dietitian. Because sometimes it's a vitamin deficiency. Really, women are very complex creatures. Seriously, they're very sophisticated, very complex. And I've done a lot of marriage counseling in my life to be able to speak about this, because seriously, there are certain, sometimes just very simple remedies for this thing. Very simple remedies for it. And then it becomes an argument because the man can't tolerate it. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you dislike something about her, focus on the goods that you like about her. And that will outweigh the bad. Now I know like there are exceptions to this, right? I know there's exceptions to this. But finally, I just want to say that the concept of purification of the heart, as you can see, it spans many ideas, from beliefs to akhlaq to interaction, relationships. It's all about the heart. If the heart can be focused on, if today the only thing that we go away with here is that, look, I've got a heart, I need to look after it, it goes through this turmoil, it becomes corrupted, or it could become sound. I want to strive to make it sound before I die, so that we can go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a qalbun salim, with a sound heart. And that's my dua for myself and for everybody else here, and for our families, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a sound heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to work on ourselves. Right? Whether we work on ourselves through the guidance of some shaykh, some accomplished person, or a good friend, a good, pious, righteous friend that can advise us properly, or we just reflect over what our enemies say about us, and we try to really genuinely think, do we really have those problems in ourselves? Or we just look at the defects of others, and we say, we want to avoid those same defects. Somebody asked Isa alayhi salam, you got such great character, where did you learn it from? He said, I just saw the ignorance of the ignorant person, the evils of an evil person, and I just decided that I wanted to avoid that. And we have to constantly be learning, because we are constantly students in this regard. We're constantly patients in this regard, because at the end of the day, in the hereafter, we want to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a qalbun salim, with a sound heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us that. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of those who made this program a possibility today, and reward all of you for the time that you've given, and anything that you may have not been able to do in this time, may Allah allow you to complete that miraculously, inshallah. And give you barakah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.